Everybody, welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Thursday, November 12th, 2020, 10 a.m. Central, in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Yeah. Well, it's Thursday, and that means it's GMing Tips Day. I think what you're seeing up on the screen right now is a GMing tip that I used on the GM's Day Facebook page. These were just regular memes that were meant to be humorous, not to be taken too seriously. The object of them is to get a point across, a real GMing tip in a way, but do it in a fun fashion, and that's what the GM's Day page is kind of about. I mean, it's an open gamer holiday that's been around for about a decade and a half. It happens on March 4th of the year, and the object is to March 4th for GM's Day. It's a command and it's a date. And what better way to celebrate all the hard work that game masters, dungeon masters, storytellers, castle keepers, whatever the referees. Game master is kind of an overarching term that covers anybody who runs games for other people. And it includes, it's mainly RPGs, right? But if you're teaching board games, demoing them, if you're refereeing a war game, a miniatures war game where you've got two sides and you have somebody overseeing it, you're game master of that too. You're referee, or whatever the term is in the particular system that is put forth, is still a game master. And so it extends beyond role playing games. Um, I should switch over to. I got a whole pile of those GMing tips. And again, there's no numbering system to these. I always put a number on them just as a kind of a joke. Sometimes the number actually meant something. Sometimes it was just whatever I pulled out of my butt at the time. So enjoy them. Good morning, Bob. How's it going? So we'll switch over to this screen and have a look at some of these. And we'll talk about them as we go, because some of them are just, kind of tongue in cheek, humorous, and just make their point on their face, prima facie. And some of them can use a little more context, right? GMing tip number 40: create some rivals for your group of player characters. Have them come to some of the same conclusions as the PCs, but arrive by different roads. So notice this. There's a sort of a ridge going down between these two roads that travel toward. Now, my guess is, in actuality, that road coming out of the left is the one that goes up to the castle. Comes down, goes to the left, wraps around behind the photographer here, and then goes down further to make it down to the beach. So there's a sort of a protected road up to this castle, which is pretty cool. The thinking, though, behind the meme, of course, is that if the regular PC group is just heading up the road to the castle, and there's another group of rivals that are heading down to that beach and know of some secret entrance to get down into the underground below the castle, dungeons, whatever you want to call it, crypts, whatever might be down there, then they both know that they're meant to go to this place, but they've gone in different ways to get there. And so There's some weeks back, we were going over one of the DMG sections where you roll up wandering creatures in dungeons. And one of the possibilities was a group of adventurers. And when it's a group of adventurers, there was a whole way of figuring out what the party makeup was of that rival group of adventurers or wandering group of adventurers. I guess they don't have to be rivals if you can talk to them and get some common ground going and make a deal. Then maybe they're allies. But it's interesting to note that a campaign world doesn't need to have but one group of adventurers. They need to have a group of adventurers controlled by the players, but there can be many, many both. I mean, you could adventurer world. There you go. Run a game that's just called Adventurer World, and make it like the Amazing Race. There's a bunch of people that have nothing to do with anything. There aren't any monsters or creatures. There's just a bunch of adventuring groups out running around, and when they run into each other, they have to deal with each other in one way or another. Whether that's to get into combat, to cut some deals, to form alliances, to deal with other groups, and you just have the whole thing be called Adventurer World. I'll write it up. Should I? Do I have time? Maybe. Maybe it needs to go as an article in a zine. That would be interesting, huh? What if I need to get this Adventurer World, no monsters, just other adventuring groups. Oh, that's funny. That'd be interesting. Might be a lot of work because it's a lot easier to pull a monster ready to go right out of a book and just run with it than it is to create entire parties. If you've been running a campaign for a long time, it may just be that you've got a big pile of characters that have passed. Here's a good time. Oh, yeah, haha. Black Knight. Little Monty Python joke there, and we're using that to illustrate, to educate. GMing tip number 29. Don't try to make all of your antagonists invincible. You have plenty more to send after the PCs later. So, there's a good tip. Don't get too invested as a game master. Don't get too invested in the creatures, the characters, the NPCs, you get more. You get as many as you want. There will always be more. So do not worry that the ones that you create will be destroyed, killed, rooked, put out of commission, retired. Let them come and go. Let that world be fluid. Let it evolve. Make sure that you're not always having your big bad runaway manage to slip off. I mean, we've all heard of, if not seen firsthand, the situations where a whole campaign gets planned around this one big bad evil guy, and then the GM decides to have him show up, early in the campaign to taunt the PCs, and they take him out. And it happens so quick. Bob says, I love it when my PCs decide not to kill rivals they have defeated. Yeah, absolutely. Give them the opportunity, too, to put them away, and they then develop more complex relationships with them. Yeah, yeah, if it's a possibility for them to turn over a new leaf, if they've been bad, to just have been misunderstood and be rivals, but not really evil, or it not be necessary for them to be killed. Maybe they are evil. Maybe they get put into prison rather than killed. These are all options other than making the big bad, making that antagonist invincible, as the meme puts forth. Let's look at the next one. GMing tip number 78. Another way to humanize a villain is to portray them as gentle pet owners, even if the pets are dark or evil in their own right. Yeah, Maleficent. We love her, don't you? With that winning smile, that angelic face under those horns, and in that scary, scary, scary way she presents herself. And yet, she's got a buddy. Of course, in this case, it's somebody who's a shapeshifter or who gets shapeshifted. But we've all seen the Bond villain with the cat in his lap as he pets it, as he describes his next evil plot to overthrow the world or take it over. And, that little touch of humanity inside the villain, even if they're mostly evil or incredibly evil, just having that inside of them makes them not quite as two-dimensional as they were moments before. Reaching out, petting a cat, giving a bird a little treat, right? Calling their dogs to them. I mean, sometimes that doesn't, work out if they've made the pets evil as well. A la Ramsay Bolton in Prism Chrism. How you doing? As in Game of Thrones, right? He had his girls, his dogs, who he used to have devour his enemies, which was always a nasty, nasty thing to do. And it was always interesting. Prism Chrism says, I made a character who no one knows for sure if they're a villain. A Genasi necromancer who has a crow that can reanimate. Now, when you say the crow can reanimate, are you saying that the crow can reanimate other things, or that if the crow dies, the crow can come back? I guess if it's a necromancer Genasi, that's something he's instilled into the crow, potentially. He reanimates the crow. Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's, pets don't have to have always been that he can reanimate. There you go. Gotcha. I misread that. So, yeah, pets don't have to be the usual sort, right? There could be something odd about them. As long as there's some sort of bond between the villain and his pet, her pet, their pet, then that creates that same sense of humanity. And it doesn't matter whether they're human or not. The word is not restricted to humans. Humanity is meant to say that it's relatable for a human to see that aspect of that villain. So there we go. Let's move on to the next one. GMing tip number 54. Making the PC's destination obvious is often the right thing to do. Sometimes it is also an easy thing to do. The plume of a volcano. Where are we going? Over there, I guess. Now, maybe in this case, the volcano itself is not the destination. Maybe they're looking for a village that's in the shadow of a volcano, and the plume lets them know where the volcano is, or at least where a volcano is. I guess there can be more than one volcano in an area. It seems to me, though, that in most cases, volcanic activity seems to be restricted to a single belching maw. But magma pushes up from underground in any sort of ways. Do you have any seafaring GMing tips? Next arc is going to be seafaring island hopping. Asks Prism Chrism. Specifically, let how much of the details of the actual shipping, sailing stuff be in the hands of the players. If the players aren't interested in which rope is which and how to tie this knot or that, you could waste a lot of time learning that stuff yourself if you don't already know it, and imparting it a lot of table time, actual game time, sharing that knowledge for no good end. Island hopping, in and of itself, means that the ship itself is a conveyance. You're really doing these isolated island adventures, and you're just getting from one to another. Does it have to be sailing? I'm not saying yours doesn't have to be sailing. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, if you look at this from an objective point of view, the object is to get from island to island and to do the things you do on those islands, not necessarily anything that happens on ship. Well, it's a single island, not really island hopping. Well, that changes that a little bit. A little bit. Because at the end of the day, the destination is an island. If that island were just another chunk of land in the middle of a continent, does that change how you're looking at the seafaring portion of this? So you kind of have to examine what you want to focus on, but also what your players will probably find interesting and what they want to focus on. So once you figure that out, you'll figure out how much time to invest in the various aspects of seafaring and sailing and all of that. Because, you can get really deep into that. You can have a lot of encounters on the actual sea. Or you can just hand wave it and say, yeah, you've got a captain and a guide, and they know where the island is, and it takes a couple of weeks, and that's where you're at. And here you are in a lagoon, and they're putting you off, and you're heading off onto the island to do what you want to do. They're going to anchor a mile or a half mile or a quarter mile offshore. They'll keep an eye. If you light a signal fire, they'll come back and pick you up. And maybe that's all of the seafaring there needs to be, if the actual focus of the adventure is what's happening on that island and what their place is in going there. President Prison says, how I'm currently doing it is as a voyage into the sea through a Bermuda Triangle-like area to get to the island. Okay, so like a portal. Then avoiding the natives of the island who ride giant crabs. Lovely. Giant crabs are a lot of fun. Then they have to get into the middle of the island to get to a deep sea trench to recover an artifact. So there's a but it's a dry trench, so it's just a deep hole that is not inundated with water. It goes below the level, below sea level, but it's dry because it's at the center of this island. Is that the idea that I'm understanding this? Water in it is very deep. So it's really as much an underwater adventure as it is a seafaring adventure then, because that's a whole separate thing. You use Genasi. I'm guessing this is 5th edition, no? It's going to do it with a diving bell, but can't figure out how to get the ship with the diving bell there. Well, so it's meant to be the sea. I mean, the island. Can't the island be horseshoe shaped? So there's like a overgrowth area with a deep channel that's kind of hidden, but they have to find their way to it and sail through this dangerous channel that is narrow and risky and whatever, and then your ship gets into the center of the island that way. Something along those lines. It could, but then why would the ship drop them off somewhere else to get to the open part of the horseshoe? Well, I just said they dropped them off. They don't have to do that. I didn't know anything about the needing to get to the center. You want exploration on the island. Yeah, see, you know, here's where you and I come at this from very different angles. You've got an idea where you want them to go, and you've got a series of things you want them to be involved in. I, on the other hand, would just write this whole thing up and let them decide how they're going to get there. And the stuff they run into is the stuff they run into based on what they've decided. I don't need them to go from A to B to C to D to E to F for it to be the adventure I want it to be. I create all of those things, and if they go from A to C and then they go straight to F, well, that's how it worked out, and that's how they have their own choices to make. I create mini settings and let the chips fall where they may. So, that's the tricky part of GMing is if you have very different styles, then some advice is going to fall by the wayside for you. But if you want people to follow a map you have in your head, then give them a map in game. Give them a map to the first thing. Whether it's an actual map or a clue that gets them there, and then when they get there, have the clue or the map for the next thing at that first thing. Oh, I don't suggest any particular thing. You could just search for RPG cartography online, jump around, look at a few different things. People learn in different ways, I've found. Different. I've talked to some people for which one mapping program will seem very intuitive, and another one they just don't get whatsoever. And I'll find another person who's just the opposite. So I would just jump online, do a search by RPG cartography, or RPG maps or mapping, map makers, and look at the few freebies that are out there and see which one makes sense right from the get-go, because you'll figure it out pretty fast. There's a lot of them that you can just use online and then download the results. There are other ones where you'll have to download something. Just, beware, because if you download something, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? So either you pay for something and download it, and that's the relationship you have with the person who made it, or you download something for free and there's some sort of other string attached, whether it's advertising in the thing you download, or it's some expectation that you're going to keep coming back for ups and extras and upgrades or whatever, and they'll get you there. There's always some sort of string attached. With websites where you can just do stuff online and then download them, you don't get the program, but they expect you to keep coming back, and then they have advertising on the website, so you'll see those. All the tools I've used, says Prism, for that are close single encounter style stuff. Yeah, it doesn't have to be an elaborate map. Are you playing this online, or are you actually meeting in person? Is this with a tight family group? You're safe enough, corona wise, to be doing this all in person, or is it an online thing? If it's an online thing, just throw up a whiteboard and draw a circle for the island and draw a line going to thing and put an X on the circle roughly where it is on the island. So, it doesn't have to be elaborate. You can have some old seafarer just meet him in a tavern and say, "Yeah, I've been to that island. There's a thing over here," and he draws a circle on the table and puts an X on it, on the quadrant of the island, north, south, east, or west, where he knows this thing to be. So don't go out of your way to create something that really is only going to effectively give them one piece of information that once they know it, they no longer have a use for the prop, right? So you can spend a whole hell of a lot of time creating this map, but you're using this map just to get them to that first encounter you want them to find before they get to the second and third and all these other ones that you say are out there for them to explore. So I don't know. I personally would not spend that much time getting that initial map ready, because it sounds like it's going to be a find and forget sort of situation. They need one thing, one piece of information from this. Don't put a whole lot of time into it. Just not worth it. Anyway, we're getting to the top of the half hour there, so where's the bottom? I guess it's the bottom of the half hour. So we're going to wind her down for the day. Thanks for popping by. Yeah, this random tips thing was kind of fun. I like coming at this and just looking at some old memes and talking about some of the thoughts and maybe update some of them. And thanks very much, Prism, for the question. And feel free to do that in the future too for GMing Tips Day. I'm happy to speak tangentially about questions that are brought up in the stream chat, for sure. It's provided it's fully understood. It's just me riffing on something, and it's not going to be a complete picture. It may not ultimately be totally useful, but perhaps there'll be some grains of sand in there that can help you build your own beach, and that's good enough, I think. Make sure you follow the channel, because every week on Monday for the previous week, we will take a name from one of our followers who spoke up in the stream chat and give that person a little something, a little gift. We've got some of these skull dice. I don't have them right with me, but I was showing them off yesterday and the day before. Had to take a pair to Johnny Gilbert. I was meeting up with him for Veterans Day, so I brought him a pair, and took a pair to my buddy Shane Bradley. He, of course, is also a veteran. I am not, but I wanted to honor them and buy them a couple of drinks. We wound up over at Sprecker's. Alex Gygax was bartending, so the four of us were getting a little gamer talk in. And I passed those dice along. I stopped by the Memorial Stone down by the Riviera, spread the dice out, took a little picture. I'll show that off next Monday. So all of the dice that I'm giving away over the next 5 weeks, maybe, something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see, 3 more. I got 3 more weeks worth of dice, I think. Pair of skull dice, and there'll be a Lake Geneva Games 6-sider in there. and all of them have been blessed on the Gary Gygax Memorial Stone. So there you go. I want to thank everybody for being there in the stream chat. Also, come on back tomorrow. We'll be doing some building adventures stuff on Friday, GM reviews on Saturday, rules retrospective on Sunday, weekly news and announcements on Monday, cartography and world building Tuesday, campaign discussion Wednesday, back around the horn, 2 GMing tips next Thursday. If you're catching up with this on YouTube, thank you very much for doing that too. Subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up to any videos you watch that you enjoy. Feel free to make constructive criticism or attaboys in the comments. Would appreciate it. And I want to say thank you very much for joining us, however you got here. It's the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Bye-bye.